Welcome to Cherry Street Investor Education with Kavita Baratake, passive income coach and founder of Cherry Street Investments. Education that is designed for you to take control of your financial life. Join us to learn how you can create multiple passive income streams, diversify your portfolio, save on your taxes, and much more. Become a better investor and fast track your financial goals. Here's your host, Kavita Baratake.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you everyone for joining this webinar on creative financing, how to snag deals in this market. This is a very important topic, especially in the light of the economic situation that we are in. Interest rates have gone up almost 400 basis points over the last 12 months. What that means is a mortgage that was maybe 3-something% that you could place on a property is now 6-something%. And what does that mean? You can afford only half of what you could afford before. Prices have not gone down by 50%, right? Prices have settled for sure. And there are more deals in the market now than there were 12 months ago. And the great opportunity exists to buy these deals, but the financing remains a bottleneck. So I thought, why not talk to you guys get someone to come talk to you about creative financing, because personally, I bought a property called a sub-2, and that's one of the strategies that Dan will talk about today. I bought a property sub-2 about 5 years ago. I'm just finally getting rid of the mortgage and selling the property. And this whole time, I never owned a mortgage on that property. So today, Dan will talk about how to apply these strategies in this particular market to buy without financing that's so expensive right now. You could buy a property with which the seller has placed a 3% financing instead of a 8% financing right now, or 7% for at least 7 to 8% for rental properties. So I'm excited to have Dan Diaz. He's the founder of the School of Sharks. He's really done all these things himself for a long time here and learned how to use creative financing to purchase deals. So we want to learn from the best in the market on how to buy deals using sub-2 and also another strategy where it's seller financing, or we also call it assumption. A few disclaimers here. We always do this for educational purposes. I host these webinars every 2 weeks, and please let us know if you have any specific topics of interest that would be useful for you. I'm happy to bring a good speaker to speak about it. A few housekeeping items. Please ask your questions in the Q&A box on the right side, and any issues with audio visual, I'm keeping an eye out on the chat box, so please type your issues there. Webinar will be recorded, and usually link was sent out to all attendees within 24 hours. A little bit about my company, Cherry Street. I do a lot of passive investments in real estate. I help people invest into apartments, land deals, senior living facilities, as well as new construction. I also focus a lot on education. So this is a part of my education, Cherry Street Investor Education. Besides this, I'm also a broker, a life insurance broker, focusing on a strategy called infinite banking, where you use a life insurance policy for investments. And if you're interested in learn more about that, you're welcome to check out a webinar that I have on YouTube on infinite banking. I also have this investor group on Facebook called Purely Passive Investor Group. We have almost 1,000 members on it, so welcome to join it. I frequently post on it on financial education and other topics. You can look up YouTube, and please subscribe to my channel called Cherry Street Investor Education. I do upload all these webinars online. That's the link, bit.ly Cherry Street. Upcoming webinars, we have this one, creative financing. We also have a webinar coming up on special needs trust planning. How can you plan better for special needs children? If you have any friends or family with special needs kids, this would be a very useful topic for them. A little bit about me. I'm an immigrant, moved here in 98, got a master's in computer science, spent 20 years in tech, and then defected over to real estate in 2019. I do full-time real estate investments as well as life insurance brokerage right now. some of the properties that I've invested into with my investors, land deals, senior living, multifamily, and some open opportunities. If you guys want to look at as ATM fund, we have a 21% return on that with monthly cash flow, as well as a car wash fund. And car washes are cash cows. So that opportunity is also open right now. This is a rotating fund. So we have a bonus round on the ATM fund right now. So if you're interested to learn more, please contact me. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Dan and let him take it away. Thank you, Dan, for being here. I appreciate your time and look forward to hearing what you have to share with the audience today.
It's an absolute pleasure. Kavita, thank you so much for having me. Zoom is one of those beautiful technologies that allows us to reach the masses in a really, really nice way. But what I personally don't like about it is that I can't see y'all. So do me a favor and make use of the chat that is on the right-hand side, and also make use of the Q&A. You're going to notice that I am going to be very fluid in the way that I speak, and it's going to be very dynamic. This is not like a set presentation with set slides, and I'm just giving you a package. Really, it's just a sharing of information based upon personal experience. A little bit about myself. My name is Dan Diaz. I've been involved in real estate as an investor since November of 2015. I've made my focus in owner financing. Now, I want to make a little bit of a housekeeping differentiation just for the sake of clarity. Although seller financing and owner financing are technically interchangeable, whenever I use the phrase owner financing, that's the disposition strategy. That's when I'm selling the home to an owner occupant, and they're going to be paying an owner finance note to me. When I use the phrase seller financing, that is an acquisitions tool for me. That means that I'm purchasing with some sort of seller financing component to it, which we're going to go into very deeply. So if I say seller financing, think acquisition. If I say owner financing, think disposition. With that in mind, I was very involved in owner financing. A little bit about my background. I too come from immigrant parents. My parents were from Mexico City. I was born in Mexico City. I was raised here since I was about 6 months old. And it's funny how the world kind of revolves. When I got involved in owner financing, I found out that my parents' first home in this country was in fact purchased dueño a dueño, which is Spanish for owner to owner or owner financing. So I thought that was really cool how things, just kind of went full circle in that regard. I began originally with single family homes, and I've kept in single family homes. I started the process like most owner finance investors, buying the house and then go ahead and owner financing it, looking for a buyer. I quickly hated that model for me personally because of many reasons. The biggest reason was the fact that in order to make the numbers work, and in order for the monthly payment to be similar to the rent payment, which is the model that is normally used, you have to stay under $200,000, really under $150,000 at a 10% interest rate. Anytime you go over the $150,000, $170,000 barrier, in order for you to keep a similar payment or interest rate, and therefore your returns will drop. So it kind of kept me in a situation where I had to stick with crappy houses. I mean, that's just kind of the truth. So that created a situation where I did not have the most attractive buyers. Yes, I had what they needed, which was owner financing, but I did not have the houses that they were looking for. So for me, things drastically changed right around 2018, 2019, when two things happened. One, I by chance discovered that there are a group of buyers. These are self-employed individuals who cannot qualify for a traditional bank mortgage because they don't have the 2 years of tax returns, or they lie to Uncle Sam, one of the two. And they're not looking for crappy houses. They're looking for great $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 homes. They have a great down payment. I just did not have the house they were looking for. And two, I discovered the wonderful world of self-directed IRAs. So that's what I was able to blend the two. And now our model is reversed engineered. We begin with the buyer first. We make a determination of their real world ability to repay. We then raise the necessary capital so that they can purchase any home off the MLS with fair owner finance terms. So we do 30-year mortgages, no balloons, no prepayment penalties, no mortgage insurance. and it's a very stabilized product for them. This has allowed us to tap into the $300,000 to $600,000 owner finance notes houses. We'll do everything from $200,000 up to $2 million, and $2 million is not where we're necessarily capped. It's just the biggest we've done. Now, what that provides for us was the ability to really expand without having holding costs. A little bit of background. Right now, we've got about $52 million assets under ownership. I know in the multifamily, I'll use the phrase assets under management. I use the phrase assets under ownership because these are our notes that we personally hold. That's the approximate unpaid principal balance on them. It translates to about 140 notes or so. We're not huge. We do about 3 to 4 deals a month on a pretty consistent basis. And we're raising at a rate of about 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 to 2 million every 28 days. So that's a little bit about the business side of things, or what I'm involved in. School of Sharks is a movement that I'm very proud of. I know that Kavith introduced me as the founder, and I love that title. I really am the co-founder. My co-founder is behind the scenes many times. He's a very, very smart gentleman from India. His name is Bhaskar Pandey. And I finally got him fired from his 9 to 5. He had a very successful career in IT, but I brought him over as a full-time investor, and he loves that. So he's the co-founder of School of Sharks.
What do you guys think of School of Sharks?
So School of Sharks really is a movement where there seems to be a gap in the market. And the gap in the market seems to be whenever you're involved in wanting to learn, you have YouTube University, which, full disclosure, I think everything you ever need is there. But it's messy, it's unorganized, it's not categorized, non-vetted, and the best way that I can describe it, it's like going into a hoarder's house and trying to find a pen or trying to find a cup. It just is not efficient, but it's free. Now, option number 2 is hiring, I'll call it the guru route, where you can hire a coach, hire a trainer, hire a mentor. Unfortunately, if they are worth a grain of salt, they're not going to be cheap. We're talking about $30,000 to $50,000 range. And many are worth it. But when people are starting out, they just don't have that money, and they can't throw it out the window, hiring a coach like that. So there's like this bridge in the middle where people are happy to start investing into their education, but baby steps. So what I tell people all the time is, I want your first dollar to be spent at School of Sharks. And I mean it. We have one course where you can get it for $1, and it's normally a $97 course. But really what we'd want to do is we want to engage the community and provide quality education. We bring in quality educators, and we make recorded webinars and very highly curated courses, very, very affordable prices. So that's really kind of the goal. Once you're ready to start investing a small amount, and when I say small, I'm talking like $100, $200, $300, very small amount into your education. We'd love to be, the first dollar that you spend. So that's the movement behind School of Sharks. School of Sharks also is, you'll notice it doesn't say Dan's School of Sharks. I am very proficient and knowledgeable, and I love talking about owner financing and everything related to it, but I'm not the end all be all. I don't know anything about RV parks. I know a little bit about mobile home parks. We own 2 of them. I know a little bit about small multifamily assets under 16 doors because we own them, but I don't know anything about land development. I don't know anything about buy and holds to a large degree portfolio. I don't know anything about property management. I know very little about Airbnbs. I say very little because last year we sold almost all of our Airbnbs. It was about 20 of them. So I know a little bit about it, but not enough for me to say, hey, learn from me. It's just not there. So School of Sharks is, hey, let's find the pros. Who is really good at these topics? And let's bring them in and let's share in the community. So it's a free Facebook group. We've done a confidential survey, but it's a vetted survey, and there's a net worth of about $3.5 billion among the top educators in the group. So join, post your questions, make connections, and and enjoy the group for sure. Now, let's talk about the topic at hand, which is how can you snag deals in this market? As Kavita mentioned earlier, the market has shifted and everyone knows it. And basically the shift that has occurred is interest rates going up. Now, while most people who rely on institutional money are now bottlenecked, those who master creative financing are having a phenomenal opportunity here. And that's really what I teach my students. If you master creative financing, you have an opportunity unlike nothing else. And the reason the opportunity is huge now is when you structure things correctly, you can pay the seller 6%, 5%, 7%, 8%, or more. So you can put them in a position where they can be earning returns that they never had access to before. It was a little bit hard to compete with creative financing when money was so cheap 2 years ago. It was almost pointless. Let me go to the bank and let me get a 3% loan, a 2% loan, and I don't have to deal with this idiot seller. But now, not only is it almost a requirement, it really works to the advantage. So let's start going to the nitty gritty. When it comes to creative financing, I like to break it down into two boxes, two compartments. Compartment number one is the box that has debt, that there's a mortgage in place. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Box number two is free and clear. So that's the first thing that you need to analyze. Is there debt on the property? Is there a mortgage? Or is it free and clear? If it's free and clear, you can structure it any which way. Now, the way that I recommend to approach it is to break it into two presentations, two proposals. I like using the word proposals. I don't make offers, I do deals. So I like to talk about proposals. The first proposal is what I like to call a term offer. And I'm going to define a term offer to the seller. I said, look, a term offer is a payment plan. That's all it is. It's a payment plan. Payment plan could be $100 a month until the debt's paid off. Payment plan could be no payments for 6 months and then everything paid in 6 months. Payment plan could be $1,000 a month for the next 6 years, and then $5,000 for 2 more years, and then no payments for a year. It's a payment plan that you and I agree on. Option number two is you can choose to be the bank. And I highly recommend that you use that phrase. There's a psychology behind it, and we're going to get to it in a little bit. So option number one, Mr. Seller, we can talk about a proposal that gets you full fair market value in a payment plan. Or option number two, we can go ahead and talk about a situation where you be the bank. And I'm happy to talk about both options. So again, we broke it down into analyzing, is this a deal that has debt? If it is, we'll talk about the solutions there. Or is this free and clear? If it's free and clear, we can then break it down into a term offer or a be the bank offer. Obviously, that's a finance offer, but don't use the word finance. There's a reason why I want you to use the word be the bank. Words mean things. I'm very adamant about that. So if they want to, which of the two would you like to talk about? Mr. Seller. Well, let's talk about what kind of payment plan could you do? Fantastic. When you give me a payment plan, you're giving me something very valuable, which is time. How much time do I need? It depends on your availability. It depends on how much you want per month, and it depends on the final price of the home. And generally speaking, Mr. Seller, and I love going into the hat of role play. Generally speaking, Mr. Seller, if you want me to pay full fair market value, I'm happy to do that. If you allow me to pay equal monthly payments for the next 15 years. Does that sound like something that could work for you? Take out a calculator and say, it looks like we're talking about a $300,000 deal. Let's go ahead and plug in $300,000. We're going to divide that by 180 months. That's however many months in 15 years. It looks like you can get $1,666.66 for the next 15 years. That will get you the full fair market value of the $300,000 home. Does this sound like something that you'd like to move forward with now?
Plus interest, I hope.
No.
Seriously?
Seriously.
People will agree to get money for 15 years without interest?
Absolutely, if presented correctly.
Wow. I would
I'm glad that you brought that up. because that is a common objection. Are you okay if we do a little role play? Do you mind being the seller?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So let's do that role play. And just the way you presented it, I want you to give me that objection. And I'm going to respond the way I respond and the way I train my team to respond and my students. Go ahead.
Why would I want to lose the opportunity cost of my dollar?
No. The interest, the interest objection. I mean, you already went down the path of why would I lose that opportunity? But before you had a question, your question was, well, what about interest?
Right. So if I should be the seller right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I said, let's say my house is worth $300,000 and you're offering to pay
$300,000, the full fair market value.
15 years, but I'm not getting interest on my $300,000 over 15 years. Why would I agree to those terms?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you brought it up. It sounds to me like you want to be the bank, and I'm totally okay with that. But full disclosure, I was not presenting a proposal for you to be the bank. I was presenting a proposal for you to get full fair market value, guaranteed monthly income for the next 15 years, a payment plan. At the end of the day, a lot of sellers, they really just don't want to discount their homes. They want to get guaranteed monthly income for years to come, and they want to sell at full fair market value. But if you want interest, you want to be the bank, it's okay. I'm okay with that. However, I need for you to be fair to me. And what do I mean by that? If you want to be the bank, you got to treat me like a bank customer. What that means is that you're going to need to give me 30 years to repay. Are you okay giving me 30 years to repay?
Sure, but I'd like a 5-year balloon, I think.
So again, you can't have it both ways. Right now, when you buy a home, it doesn't come with balloons. I mean, you and I know that investment products do. But when you bought this house and you got a mortgage, it did not come with balloons. So if you want to be the bank, you've got to give me bank benefits. And one of those is 30 years to repay. Yes, you do get to collect a little bit of interest. And congratulations, interest rates are up. So I would need to give you bank interest rates, about 5 to 6%. But you would have to give me 30 years to repay. Are you comfortable giving me 30 years to repay?
That depends on your credit and also your ability to repay. And I also need a down payment from you. So
I'm glad you brought that up, because right now, that's exactly what banks get. You might be surprised to know, Ms. Seller, that 85% of bank loans are done with 0 down up to 3.5% down. So if you want a down payment within that range, I'm happy to do that for you. Again, I'm just trying to be fair. If you want to be the bank, you got to treat me like a bank customer. So what would work for you between 0 down and 3.5% down? Do you see what I'm doing?
Yeah, but I think I want to ask, do you qualify for a bank loan? If you do, then why don't you just go to the bank and I'll make a sale, like a normal sale?
Fantastic. I'm glad you asked. And this is the reason why. My bank will loan me millions of dollars at a time. However, their requirement is that they will only loan me 70% of what the property is worth. So if you wanted me to go down the bank route, the most I could pay for this home would be about $210,000. I don't want you to get a haircut, which is why I didn't offer it. But if you want me to go down that route, we can go ahead and draft up an offer for $210,000. You see what I'm doing?
Right. But
you cannot have it as a seller. I do not allow you to have your cake and eat it too.
Right.
And that's really what I teach my students. And what I teach the audience, and hopefully what y'all learn, and full disclosure, Kavita and everyone who's here, y'all are very sophisticated people. 99% of the people you speak to do not come up with these objections.
Right.
So as long as you understand the basics, term offer, payment plan, no interest, no down payment. It's just a payment plan. What's the benefit? You're probably asking. Full fair market value. You don't have to sell for $210,000. I'll buy it for $300,000. Heck, do you want me to buy it for $1 million? I'll buy it for $1 million if you let me pay $100 per month until the debt's paid off. So I can pay you any amount. provided the amount allows me to cash flow. So that's a term offer. You want interest? You want to be the bank? No problem. I need 30 years. I do not allow balloons because I asked them, did you get a balloon when you got this house? No, because banks do not do balloons. They're fair. They give 30 years to repay. And in exchange for that, they do collect interest. But you have to give me 30 years to repay. I didn't present that, Miss Seller, because most sellers really don't want to wait 30 years. That's how come I talked about 15.
Right. Still a
So
long
that's
time.
the psychology. That's the psychology. Now, great question. Let's say that the seller says, I don't know about 15 years. You start negotiating. Well, how do you feel about 12? How do you feel about 10? How do you feel? And I get no's. I get no's every single time. I don't let them tell me how much time. In other words, I don't say, well, how much time will you give me? Because they're going to say 12 months.
Yeah.
You know? They're going to say, I'll give you 3 years.
I think
And
honestly,
3 years doesn't work.
Yeah, honestly, if I look at the market right now, and now I'm not speaking like a seller, but honestly, if I look at the market right now, if I'm a buyer, I think that interest rates might go down in like 2-3 more years. So even if I can buy 3 years out, right? Like if I can get a house which is owner finance for 3 to 5 years, I have an opportunity to buy it, let's say at a low interest rate and then refinance it later. That might also work, right? So
100%. Yeah. You can work it out anyway. Full disclosure, I only do home runs. I don't do a lot of deals, but I only do home runs. So I don't put myself in a situation where maybe down the line, I think it kind of improve. No, it's got to be profitable today. And I've got to prepare the runway so that it continues to be profitable for years to come. Will interest rates go down? First of all, who knows? I personally, if you want to have that conversation, I think interest rates still have a couple points up to go. I think a healthy interest rate for a first world economy is 8 to 9%. 8 to 9% keeps prices at bay. So it prevents these crazy prices situations. It still allows the payments to be reasonable and affordable for most buyers. And it makes the mortgage notes attractive for the secondary market. Who was buying mortgage notes when they were being originated at 3%? Only crazy funds in China. Nobody wanted them. So 8 to 9% is the amount that is a healthy margin. And I think we're going to land there possibly. And I hope we do, because that's the healthy rate that allows most modern day economies to remain healthy. People forget that banks were charging 18% in 1981. Are we going to go back to 18%? No, we're not. I really don't think we're ever going to go back. But by the same token, we're not going to go back to 3% either. Ever.
No.
Ever.
I think 4 to 5 is where I think the market will settle, but what do I know, right? Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. All I know is that definitely at 6 to 8% or 6 to 7 where we are right now, we're definitely seeing a slowdown, especially in markets like Austin, where prices are so high, taxes are high. Affordability is really bad with 6 to 7%. You know, if you can do the numbers, a $500,000 house in Austin cost over $300,000 or $3,000 a month, $3,500 a month to service just the debt and all the payments. I don't think that's very affordable.
I got a comment: 8 to 9% interest rates. There will be riots, at least according to the RT wing. We were babied. You know, and you know, whatever, maybe there will be riots, but that is a healthy rate that statistically works for all parties in the mortgage industry. The note buyers, the sellers, the buyers, the mortgage companies, kind of everything. We've got a question from anonymous attendee. Why would a seller agree to not get paid fully up front if they want to use the cash to swap into a new home? Great question. This solution doesn't work for everyone. And it's very important that you realize it. If a seller truly genuinely has a destiny for that money, like for example, to put them into their new home, yeah, this is not going to work. So it is important that you recognize that you have a square peg. Don't try to put it into a round hole. Look for situations that kind of work a little bit better. But also be aware that whenever you hear free and clear, whenever there is no destiny for money, whenever certain metrics are you hear them in the conversation, know what tool to bring out. And that's where creative financing. So your question, it's not an ignorant question, but you're thinking of a round hole and you're thinking, how can this square peg fit into my round hole? Well, it's not. Don't stop it. It doesn't fit everywhere. Hopefully that kind of answers your question.
Rental owners are probably more likely to want to do seller financing versus, let's say I'm a person living in my primary residence and all I want to do is buy another house.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
I don't want to do seller financing because I don't have the capacity to. I need that money for my.
You need the money. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and it's
but
okay.
If I'm a rental homeowner, I might consider it because I'm like, hey, is it going to generate the returns that I want it to generate? I might be open to that. So
you kind of targeted, you hit the two most common sellers or avatars of sellers. One, what I like to call tired landlords, where they bought this house with an expectation of return and they haven't gotten it. And my proposal, again, I use that phrase a lot, is, hey, I know what you wanted to do with this house at one time, and I'm sorry it hasn't worked for you, but let me share a proposal that may allow you to get your dream, to realize your dream of getting a return from this asset. And what we'll do is we'll elevate you from a landlord to a liendlord. Again, words mean things, use psychology. How does this elevation benefit you? Well, it takes away all the problems of dealing with the house. The big T's: tenants, toilets, trash, termites, and turnover. I now take care of all that. And you and I work on a specific rate of return that makes sense for you, considering that you're no longer going to be dealing with all of these T's and I'm going to be absorbing them. So yes, the tired landlord is one great avatar for a seller. The second is the 70-year-old lady who is going to be moving in with kids, who might be moving into a retirement home. That's a great avatar for a seller, because this might sound ironic, but they are scared of receiving that money in one lump sum on the sale. They know they need to sell because they're getting old. They know they need healthcare. They know that they need to be living with their children or someone else. But they also know their bastard children and grandkids, that the minute they see a lump sum of money, those grubby little hands are going to come at it. So when you present a term offer or a seller finance offer from the perspective of capital preservation, this allows your capital to be preserved, and it prevents your grubby little children and grandkids from touching it, and it gives you guaranteed monthly cash flow for the next 15, 20, 30 years. Then it becomes, very attractive for the old folks sellers.
There are a couple of questions and
Sure.
Comments as well, I think is very relevant. He says also for capital gains.
Correct. That goes back to the tired landlord situation.
Aren't they still going to realize capital gains? Because the minute they sell the house over to you, even if they're owner financing, they are realizing the gains, right?
So it depends on how they're set up. And it depends if they are branded as a broker. If they're branded as a dealer, if they're branded as a dealer. Generally,
simple layperson.
No, it's an installment sale. Yeah, it's an installment sale. So it depends on how they do their taxes. An installment sale can, in fact, realize the gain as the income is being produced.
Gotcha.
There is, and unfortunately the IRS is, and I'm not a CPA, this is not tax advice, whatever disclosures she put, they really apply right now. This is only for educational purposes, entertainment purposes only.
Yeah.
But it kind of depends on how they're set up. But the general consensus is that if you do 3 or less per year, then it's very easy to not be qualified into the dealer status, and therefore the dealer status keeps you away from realizing that entire gain. There is no, that is not set in stone. You'll not find it in writing. It's going to be a situation where IRS says, well, wait a minute, what happened? Maybe you get audited. Maybe they look at the situation. I can tell you from my personal experience with sellers we've purchased. This one seller, he sold 17 houses in 1 year. Well, in one transaction. And I specifically asked him, like, hey, I'm real curious. I don't want you to get hit. And he's like, well, let me talk to my CPA. And the CPA is like, well, you've never really done this before. So even though it is 17, in one hit, he says, I don't know, you want to take a crapshoot? And he did. And he didn't get dinged, for realizing. So it's just one of those gray areas that it's like, which is one of the reasons why I don't pitch, Dominique, that it's a tax advantage through saving capital gains. I don't pitch that because at the end of the day, they might get hit. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on your tax situation, basically. So it's not something we want to pitch as a tax advantage. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Omar asks, where do you find these sellers?
Great question. So there is no Walmart of owner finance sellers you can go pick at. Again, this is educating your ear to situations that might allow the square peg to fit in. So you're not going to be looking for seller finance sellers. There is no place that you can go look for them, but you can look for situations. Again, the situations are free and clear properties across all asset classes: land, lots, mobile homes, mobile home parks, multifamily, free and clear, and debt. We haven't talked about how to engineer, properties that have debt, but when it comes to debt, I like to break it down into two compartments. Compartment number one is low or no equity. And compartment number two, heavy equity situation. So I'm just going to say 50%, just as a rule of numbers. So let's say you have a property that has 50% of the value or the sale price in the mortgage. That's heavy debt versus, heavy equity versus little to no equity. Little to no equity, I just say, hey, listen, you can't sell on the market right now because you're going to have to write a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 check. I teach my acquisition people and I teach my students to do the math. When I say do the math, is actually sit down with the seller and say, hey, where are you likely going to land if you sell this property on the MLS? These are the numbers that I want y'all to plug in, because these are the numbers that I plug in. 6% realtor commissions, 4% closing costs, 5% holding costs. That's a real nice round number that equals 15%. So take the asking price and subtract 15%. And if they have at least 15% of equity, they're going to walk away with money. They have enough equity to sell. But if they don't have 15% of equity, they don't have enough equity to sell on a retail setting to somebody who's going to live in it and get a loan. They're going to have to write a check. So I make them do the math. Let's go ahead and do the math. How big of a check are you going to write? 15, 18, 20, 30, 40, $50,000. Fantastic. Where's this money going to come from? I haven't presented sub 2 property acquisition at this point. I'm just trying to figure out how big of a problem I'm solving. That's all I'm doing with this math. I'm trying to figure out how big of a problem I need to solve. And once we figure out, okay, it looks like you're going to be writing a $35,000 check. Do you have it? And I shut up. Well, I mean, in our 401k, okay, well then tack on 10% penalty. So it looks like it's going to be a $40,000 hit to your 401k. Or yeah, we have it in the bank, but we don't really want to spend it. Okay. You now have a $35,000 problem. And that is so important that you do them in your negotiations, because most people cannot attach a dollar amount value to a subject to property acquisition solution. I'm going to say that again. Most people, even investors, they cannot attach a dollar amount to the solution of purchasing subject to. However, when you do this math and you show them, or they show you, that they're going to have to write a $30,000 check if they want to sell on the market, now your solution has a $30,000 value. Do you think they're going to respect you a little bit more? Yeah. Because now you can say, well, listen, and I still don't talk about subject to, because I'm like, man, okay. So you got a $30,000 problem. That's a big problem. But I'm curious, how much is your mortgage payment? $2,000, for example, a month. Would you be okay if you at least rented it for the mortgage amount? I mean, would that work for you? Most people say yes. And then you do a little bit of analyzation. Is the mortgage payment even possible with rental comps? If the mortgage payment is $3,000 and rental comps are $2,000, then I tell them, look, you might only get somebody here for $2,000 a month. That means you're going to have to pay $1,000 a month. It's not $35,000, but it is every month. Is this a solution that would work for you? I still haven't plugged myself into there yet. I'm building value through this negotiation. And then, let's say they say they're like, no, it's too much. Or let's say that the mortgage amount is the rental comps amount. It's like, I still remind them of the problem. Now, just because you're getting $2,000 to pay the $2,000 mortgage doesn't really mean all your problems are gone, because now you have become a landlord. And now you have to deal with tenants, toilets, trash, termites, and turnover. So I'm going to let you know that even though the rent payment will cover the mortgage payment, you probably need to put aside every month about $300-400 a month when there's a turnover, when there's a repair. So I really visualize and paint the problem that they have, so that when I come up with the solution, I am the full hero with dollar amounts attached to my solution. And I love no and low equity situations as well, because it's those when they do the math and they realize, man, I got to write a $20,000 check, $30,000 check, $50,000 check. Here's part of the negotiation. If it's a new community, which likely will be a new community, most of these deals, what are the building incentives? What are the builder incentives in the community? There's builder incentives that are giving you $10, $15, $20, $30,000. Well, guess what? You have to drop the price, because you're not going to be offering those concessions, and you got to drop the price by that amount. So I know you thought we were going to write a $30,000 check, but now we got to add the $20,000 builder concessions. So now you're probably going to have to write a $1,000 check if it's in a new community situation. Build the problem. Let them see the dollar amount, so that when you come in with the solution, then all of a sudden you really are the hero. Does that make sense?
Talk about subject to. I know what it is. I just want to make sure the audience understands what a subject to is.
Oh, yes. Line 203 of the HUD-1 settlement statement. If you've never seen it, go look it up and Google it. It says property taken subject to. Subject to property acquisition, the easiest way to understand it is me taking the deed, because it's a purchase, me taking the deed as the buyer, and me agreeing to make the payments in behalf of the seller. Now, I don't want you to confuse this. This is not a loan assumption. A loan assumption has a meaning in the lender world, which the lender gives approval and the responsibility is now transferred over to you. You're going to have to go through underwriting, through DTI. You might have to put a down payment. Your credit will be hard pulled. That's not what subject to property acquisition is. Subject to property acquisition is, seller, give me the deed. I promise to make the payments on your behalf. Obviously, these promises are in writing. It's done at closing, and you want to construct, a situation where they are protected. There are a lot of investors who say, or who simply just take the deed. I'm not a fan of doing that. What I do is they give me a wraparound mortgage exactly equal to the debt and the payments. But the wraparound mortgage that they receive gives them the legal structure. So if I don't ever make the payments on their behalf like I agreed to, they can come and foreclose on me. If they simply give me the deed, then they have no resource whatsoever. They're done with the property. And if I'm a jerk and not make payments, there is nothing that they can do. Obviously, they don't know that. And that's why a lot of investors prefer doing it that way. Personally, I always believe in doing the right thing. So what I tell them is, look, you could just give me the deed, but instead we're going to do this. You're going to give me a wraparound mortgage that's identical to the debt and to the payments, just like we talked about. I'll be making payments on your behalf, but the wraparound mortgage, the wraparound deed of trust is going to allow you to foreclose on me if I ever die and apocalypse happens and the mortgage company doesn't get the payments. So that's what subject to property acquisition is. Most agents have no idea what it is. Most agents don't know how to understand it. But I always tell agents, a lot of agents tell me that's not even legal. I'm like, bullshit. Go to line 203 of the HUD-1 settlement statement and you tell me what that line is for. It says loans taken subject to. And usually they shut up after that. We got some really good questions. Oh, anonymous at 10D. Why are you being so mysterious? What's the best way to structure creative finance debt with the seller for a team that is just starting out, who has less than 50% capital of the asking price in context to allow 2 to 3 years to add value to that deal in order to buy out the seller? I'm a little confused on the question.
With the seller for a team, what's the team got to do with it? I don't think that we understand that.
I don't think, yeah. We'll let you either write it again, maybe kind of clarify it. Just give us the question and we'll get back to you. Seema, you want to read Seema's question?
Sure. Why would the seller not agree to be paid upfront? The real estate meetings I've attended in Sarasota, sellers don't want to trigger higher taxes and would prefer the dollars over a longer period of time. So to make more dollars over a longer period, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Why would the sellers not agree to be paid upfront?
Are you answering your question? Because it sounds like you're answering your question.
Oh, is she the anonymous attendee who's answering her own question?
No. Yeah, I don't know. Seema asked the question, and I think she kind of answered it. Why would the seller not agree to be paid upfront? Well, it says the sellers don't want to trigger higher taxes and would prefer money over time. Yeah, that's like.
Oh, okay. She's answering the above.
I think so.
Question. Okay.
Yeah. Why would you recommend a wraparound mortgage on a commercial? Would you recommend a wraparound mortgage on a commercial loan, 15-year balloon? I have a couple units at 4%. If so, great question. So wraparound mortgage would be most effective on single family homes where we're dealing with residential mortgages. Commercial loans on commercial properties, those are actually beautiful because you can assume them without it being on your personal credit. So those you don't need to do a wraparound mortgage. You can actually just do a regular assumption of the loan because the underwriting is going to be based on the income. So my example was more for a single family home situation where you're dealing with a residential Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA, USDA kind of loan.
Hey, Dan, I'm reading the question. I'm reading it a little bit differently. So tell me if I'm wrong,
Sure.
But sounds like he's the seller, right? Who has a mortgage at 4%, which is a very attractive rate. Could he not wrap another mortgage around, let's say at the current rate of 6%?
Oh, okay. I am sorry. Okay.
And make the difference.
Then yes, I would highly recommend that you do that. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think you're right. So you're the seller and saying, would you recommend doing a wraparound mortgage and a commercial loan? 15-year balloon? Yes, absolutely. Right now, bank interest rates are 5%, 6%. So go ahead and make that spread. Yeah, 100%. I would.
You're totally, in fact, if you get what I've seen is there are buyers in the market who are not qualified, like self-employed or people who aren't reporting all their income for various reasons, and who, like Dan mentioned, have really good jobs or they have really good businesses. They will even pay 8% for a 4% loan, and you can wrap it around and collect the spread. So
100%. And I'll tell you who the buyer is going to be. They're going to be Hispanic individuals that either don't have a social security number in this country, but they live here, or they haven't completed their path to citizenship. Something I love about Hispanic community is that 8 to 10% interest rate is very common in their world. They're very happy with it because Mexico's interest rate is about 18 to 25%. So when you pitch 8 to 10%, they're very, very happy. So that's going to be who your buyer is for that deal. You want to read the next question?
Sure. What types of sellers are more likely to agree to subject to deals?
We answered that a little bit. Yeah, we answered that a little bit. So veterans is probably the number one seller because I love my veterans. I love what they do for our country. But unfortunately, I think they get kicked in the shin by having, I mean, it's a great benefit that they can buy a home with 0% down, but it sucks that their employer likely will make them move within 2 to 3 years, and therefore they are not likely to have the equity in the home to be able to make the sale. So VA loans is probably a great abundant avatar seller to pitch to or to
Another one
target.
is any kind of distressed seller. So I'll give you an example. I bought a subject to deal in San Antonio. There was an old couple who wanted to move out of Texas. They were from Michigan, and they had gotten a second lien on the property to make things worse, but they had quite a bit of equity, but they wanted to leave within the next few days. They just like, we don't want to be in Texas anymore. I don't need anything from this house. They had two loans on the house, but even with the 2 loans, and they had over, I want to say $20,000-$30,000 in outstanding payments on these loans that they hadn't, and they were going to get foreclosed on. So I basically stepped in, took over their mortgages, paid off all their loans, and it was still profitable for me to do so because, one, I was rescuing them from a foreclosure, right, which would harm their credit forever, and 2, they wanted to leave Texas with a few dollars, and I gave them that money.
Yeah,
Because
speed
yeah,
is the friend.
Yeah.
Speed of closing. Also, if you're going to buy a property and the numbers you negotiated, again, I'm just going to throw numbers out there. Let's say you negotiate a $200,000 purchase price and the mortgage is $190,000, for example, and you're going to flip it. You can pitch subject to property acquisition in the role of a hard money loan situation. Instead of going out and getting a 12% interest hard money loan, let me just continue making payments on this property for the next 6 months until I flip it, and then everyone gets paid. So that's another way to save money on your flips, because the price of the home doesn't have to be borrowed at 12% interest rate. Now, keep in mind that hard money lenders are not going to go in a second lien position. So if you need money to fix it up, that does have to come out of your pocket. But subject to does work on short-term basis as well. I don't use it often because I don't flip. I mean, I like to hold long-term and deploy long-term, but that's my preference. With subject to financing, if seller agrees with buyer on taking over deed and paying the mortgage every month for them, wouldn't seller want or eventually wants the full price sold of the property? Seller wants, help me understand that question.
I'll help you understand. I think I
Okay.
understand. It's a little bit not very well phrased, but I think the question is, I think they are assuming somehow that the seller would eventually still own the house and want full price for the property after giving it to the buyer subject to. So once you deed the property over to the buyer, you don't really get it back. It's the buyer's property. So there's no like seller cannot come back and say, I want a full price now. Yeah. They have just given over the deed, handed off all control. And then you as a buyer, let's say I'm the buyer and I take a property subject to, I make the payments for as long as I want and I want to keep the mortgage. The seller has nothing to do with that house at that point. They get relinquished complete control because the property is mine right now, right? Yeah, 100%. The only place it'll come in is that they have to add you on their mortgage to be able to even talk to the mortgage company, because otherwise you have no right to call their mortgage company, right? So you have to get all those rights assigned over to you to be able to deal with a mortgage company as an authorized user.
And full disclosure, many times you still need a good communication with the seller 2, 3, 4 years down the line. So something that I do is I always send them a yearly thank you at the end of the year. I call them, my business partners in that sense, in that deal, and I send them a $250 gift card, usually around Christmas time. So as a way of thank you for staying in communication. Also, it's an easy way for me to make sure that their contact information is still up to date, because I want to send them money. So you gotta remember that buying subject to property acquisition is starting a 20, 25, 30-year relationship with the seller, possibly, not always. I mean, it could be shortened a lot sooner if you sell it or something happens, refinance or whatever, but it could be a long-term relationship. So we got a question from Shishir. Great question. I love that you were paying attention, because you're like, you have not answered this point, even though you talked about it. So what is the strategy for heavy equity, more than 50% scenarios? How does it differ from free and clear deals? So free and clear deals, it's the wild, wild west. And what I mean by that, it is two people. You both come up with a payment plan or a finance structure, but it's two people. They control fully the entire equity of the transaction. So therefore they can decide how that equity will be transferred over to you and how payments will happen. But let's talk about a situation. And again, I'm just going to plug in numbers. Let's say a house has an asking price of $500,000 and there is a $250,000, mortgage on it. What you can do to structure it is, if you want, you can pay the full $500,000 on paper. You take over the $250,000 mortgage subject to. That leaves a $250,000 equity spread to the seller, and then go back to plan A, which is what kind of payment plan on a monthly basis would make sense for this deal. So at that point, you can look at rental income if you're going to be keeping it as a rental property. You can look at wrap income if you're going to be owner financing it to a final buyer. What are you going to be doing with it? So let's say, that $4,000 are going to be coming in as a rental income, and the mortgage payment has, $2,000. Well, technically, there's $2,000 difference that can be allocated towards the payment of the equity. Obviously, you have to calculate property management, repairs, maintenance, taxes, insurance, all that good stuff. But basically what you're doing is how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You break it down into two components. You take subject to the part that you can take subject to, and then you just come up with an agreement for the balance. And I love those as well, because I always like to present things from the perspective of what can the deal afford to pay? Not what can Dan afford to pay. Dan's got a lot of money. He can pay a lot, but it's not what Dan can pay. It's what can the deal afford to pay? So simple underwriting. If you guys want to do like 10-second underwriting on single family homes, as long as you allocate no more than 50% of the gross rental income to debt service, whether it's a loan or whether it's the seller, whether it's a term offer or whether it has an interest component, as long as the debt service is no more than 50% of the gross rental income, you're going to be in good shape. And I think that, once you figure out the numbers, you're like, oh, wait, yeah, that makes sense. There's enough money for taxes. There's enough money for insurance. There's enough money for property management. There's enough allocation for repairs, for maintenance, and for vacancies, and you'll have a small cash flow. So that's like a real simple underwriting that you can do where, hey, it looks like your property is going to bring in $2,000 a month. I can pay up to $1,000 for debt service. I can either pay it to the bank, or I can pay it to you, or I can pay it to whoever. I don't care who I'm paying. Now, they might say, well, okay, we'll pay it to the bank. Go get a bank loan. Okay, well, let's figure out how much is the bank going to give me that'll produce a $1,000 a month payment. And that's where you plug in 20 years or 30 years and an 8% interest. Because when you plug in a high interest rate, the loan amount will be less. And then the seller can see, look, the amount that the bank will give me, which will equal $1,000 a month, which is the most this property can afford to pay in debt service, is this much. Do you want this money, or do you want the $200,000 that the property is worth? Well, I want the $200,000. Okay. Well, I'll pay you the $1,000 a month until the $200,000 are paid off. So, 50% of gross rental income is super easy and super quick for single family home underwriting. And I can literally do it in 2 minutes or less, 30 seconds.
Sounds great. All right. I have another question. I actually answered
Sure.
it, but I want to kind of bring it up. Why would
Yeah.
a seller want to do subject to financing with the buyer taking over the deed if they cannot get paid, or they can just sell it and make a profit instead?
So again, square peg into a round hole. If they in fact can sell on the market and there is enough equity in fact for them to profit, then that's probably what they need to, and they have the time,
Right.
and that's probably what they need to do.
Right. I think time factor comes down to the situation, or they have no equity, right?
Mhm.
If they have little or no equity and it doesn't make sense for them to put it on the market and pay 10-15% that Dan said would cost them to sell the house, they might take this route instead. Or
Yes.
they're going through a divorce or some extenuating circumstance. They just want the property off their hands, but they don't want to screw up their credit, right?
And they don't want to discount it.
Right.
They don't want to discount it. I can pay and I can buy at full fair market value. And I do it all the time and I don't care. Why? Because properties will continue going up in value. Not at what we saw last year. I get it. But, historically they will go up in value. So I'm locking in an asset at today's prices, but I'm paying it over 30 years. So that's the avatar seller, the ones that have been bombarded by wholesalers who are offering 60 cents on the dollar, 65 cents on the dollar. And they're like, no, I don't. It's funny because I even get sellers that say, I don't even want the money, but I just don't want to get screwed. Like, how can I get more money? I don't even want all the money. Remember, preservation of capital is another very powerful negotiation tool. I've talked to so many sellers and literally they are nervous and anxious, and it makes them twitch because they don't know what they're going to do with the money that they're going to get in a lump sum. Now, again, this does not involve people who know what they're going to do with the money, like put it into another home. If they know what they're going to do with the money, that's fine. It's not our avatar. But the 70-year-old lady, the 80-year-old lady, the 80-year-old man that still thinks they're going to live another 10, 15 years, they still have living expenses. They know that the kids and grandkids are going to eat up and destroy that money. And I have that conversation with all the time. Listen, if I give you a lump sum of money for this house, how long are you going to keep it? If you and I have lunch in 5 years, how much of that money are you really going to have? It's going to be gone. We both know it.
Yeah.
So how can we preserve that capital? By creating a payment plan that allows you to receive that capital over time. Does it make sense for you to open up the entire water hose when you're going to fill up a cup of water? No. You measure it, you regulate it. That's what we're doing with this proposal, with this sale. We're regulating the amount of money that you get every month, because the kids can't take $200,000 if you only got $2,000 this month. And that presentation, I promise you, that presentation alone and that benefit alone sells 80% of the old people. They know what their kids are going to do with them. They know they're going to get eaten alive. And they're like, wow, you're my savior now. and of course, there's questions like, well, what happens when I die? The answer is, what do you want to happen? Do you want me to give the balance to the kids? Do you want me to continue the monthly payment plan? Your kids are going to inherit the note. So what do you want to happen afterwards?
I mean, at the end of the day, Dan, it sounds like they have a problem and you're solving the problem. And I think that
100%.
really is it's like when people have problems and you can present a solution that gets them out of the problem, that's what you get paid for, right? So.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of investors, and I feel that some in the audience, they're asking themselves, why would a seller do this?
Right.
And the answer to that question is, you have not realized that this is not something you force down every seller's throat. You simply keep it in your back pocket and you listen for clues that identify these problems, and then you bring out that tool that solves that problem.
Yep.
So that's all it is. Identifying that you have a Phillips screw, and whenever you find a Phillips screwdriver, and whenever you find a Phillips screw, well, then you plug it in. But don't try to plug it in every time.
Yeah, don't try to make a seller finance out of every situation.
No. As a matter of fact, here's a tip that I want y'all to learn. Never, ever say, would you be open to seller financing? Because it doesn't matter what they say, it'll be bad. I'm going to repeat that. It doesn't matter what they say, it'll be bad. If they say yes, then they are probably a savvy investor, and they're going to come back with 20 to 30% down, 12% interest rate, 30-year amortization with a 3-year balloon. And you can't do anything with it. So that's bad. And if they say no, well, they shut the door on you. So never, ever say, would you be open to seller financing? Ever. What you do is, would you be open to hearing a discussion about a proposal that could possibly get you guaranteed monthly income for the next 15 years, and you're able to sell for full fair market value?
Right.
Start with terms. They're going to bring up the objection of, well, what's the down payment? What's the interest? Literally, I'm like, what's that? And I tell them, look, full disclosure, I was not talking about you being the bank. I was talking about you getting full fair market value and guaranteed monthly income for years to come. If you want to be the bank, totally okay with that, but just be aware, you got to treat me like a bank customer. I need 30 years to repay. Will you give me those 30 years? I don't move from the conversation until I get a yes from that. Well, I'm going to want, some sort of balloon. Well, it sounds to me like you're not being fair to me. Did you get a balloon when you bought this house through the bank? No. So you want to be the bank. I'm okay. You got to treat me like a bank customer.
I think
you got to keep control.
And to me, it seems like a lot of the people you do the seller financing from are not as savvy as you or me.
100%. They're absolute amateurs. And I love it.
What they're doing, right? So I think a lot of people on here should remember that they're not dealing with their own avatar. You're not dealing with Shishir. You're not dealing with another Shishir, right? This person doesn't know much, and they are just having a problem with the house that they want to get rid of the house. So you need to be there to provide a solution to them. And that's what I figured out.
There's a saying in the finance world that says, never buy something based upon your pocket or your wallet. Sometimes we say, well, I would never do this. Well, every person here who's asking, why would a seller do it? What you're really saying is, I would never do this. So why would someone else do it? Right. Well, you're not in their situation. Y'all are successful individuals that are probably doing very well on your own. You're not going to be ever getting a phone call from me. I mean, that's the truth. So don't think in terms of why would a seller do it? Why would a seller sell at half price to a wholesaler or cash buyer? Because they have a need. And you're going to solve that need. Yep. Shishir, if you sell a seller finance home before the completion of the payment plan, how does the seller get paid the remainder of the balance? Oh, great question. So I think what you're asking is, if I wrap it to an owner finance buyer, I think that's the question. My payments will continue to the original seller, and I'm going to be collecting payments. Now, if you mean that you sell the property to like on the market where somebody gets a loan, well, it's going to go through title. The lien to the seller is going to be on title. So they're going to give them a call and say, hey, this property is getting cashed out. It's being sold. What's your balance? They're going to treat them just like any mortgage company. So they're going to get paid at closing. Now, negotiation. This is where you want to step in. Every single seller that I have a seller finance purchase with, know two things. One, I'm the money guy. We are going to start a relationship, and I'm the guy with the money. So anytime their car breaks down, anytime their kid turns 16 and they want to do a sweet 16 party, anytime they need money for vacations, I am their ATM. I got money. They have a debt, or I have a debt with them. So I train them. Anytime you need money, I'm your pawn shop. I'm your guy. Talk to me. So how do I use that in negotiation? How much money do you want? $2,000. Fantastic. Let's wipe off 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 from the debt. At the end of the day, it's just paper to them. They want the cash now. So the beautiful part about seller financing is that when you're dealing with cash, the negotiation ends at the closing table. Once you close, there is nothing that you can negotiate afterwards. When you negotiate a seller finance purchase, the negotiation begins at the closing table. And if it's a 30-year deal, if it's a 15-year deal, if it's a 10-year deal, those are 10 years. That is my runway to continue negotiating with them. The second thing that they know is that I'm going to give them regular calls. And the calls go like this. Hey, listen, Mr. Seller, I just want to let you know I came across a little bit of money. Obviously not as much money as, I owe you, $200,000 or whatever. I came up with, $12,000 I got on hand right now. If you'd like to, I can go ahead and pay you that amount. Obviously, I'm going to want something in return. You think we can negotiate a $24,000 debt reduction? You think we can negotiate advance payments? You think we can negotiate a reduction in interest rate? So I continue negotiating for years to come, which is why I'm not afraid of starting at full fair market value, because I know the negotiation has just begun and it'll continue for years to come. And I'm your money guy.
That's powerful.
You didn't think about that, huh?
Nope, not at all.
You can't really do it if you only did subject to, because the debt is owned by the bank. Right. But that's the reason why free and clear property. Oh my God. Yeah. And I've had sellers, they're going to go through a divorce. I just finished a deal where I owed $130,000, the balance on that house. And they're going through a divorce. And literally they're like, how much will you cash this out at? And I'm like, man, you caught me at a bad time. I got 40,000 if you want it. And they took 40.
Wow. And they said they don't want the rest? They just, or is it?
They want 40. They want money now.
Wow.
They can't see each other. They can't see each other. They're going their separate ways.
Yeah. It's crazy how little people negotiate, or are they willing to settle for. It shocks me, because as an investor, I would never do it.
I know.
They're not investors, right? So
these are not investors. They don't understand rates of return and amortization tables and compound interest. And they just want whatever it is that they need now. You solve their problem now. So they did the deal. Tomorrow they're going to have more problems, and you're going to solve them, because money solves most, if not all, problems. So
most, I'd say, except health problems, maybe. All right. I didn't realize it's 8:20 and we've gone way over.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry if I went over time.
I'm sorry, because I'm taking up your time, and
I'm happy to give.
So caught in this conversation and real life things that happen in the field. So this has been a good conversation. Thank you so much.
To recap, we covered free and clear properties. We covered subject to with little to no equity. We also covered how to handle subject to property acquisitions when there is substantial equity. We also talked about how to negotiate term offers and how to negotiate seller finance offers. I've got a special, kind of gift for everyone. There is a course on School of Sharks called the Exact Script, which it is the exact script that we use for our acquisitions team. Do me a favor and go to School of Sharks and post. I didn't plan ahead, so let's do this. Just go to School of Sharks. Obviously, join, and it's free. And post, Dan, give me the free script you told me I would get. I'm okay with that. And I'll have my assistant kind of reach out to you guys tomorrow to give y'all access to it. It's only a $97 course, but we love giving it out as a way of thank you, for investing in yourselves.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate the free offer for all these folks. And there'll be more people watching on YouTube. So
I don't care. Yeah. I'm happy to. If they got value, go to School of Sharks, do a post, that says that I'm amazing and beautiful. No, I'm kidding. That you got value, from this webinar, and where's my free course? And I'll make sure that our team gets it out to y'all. All right.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a great one. Nice meeting y'all. Great questions, Shashir and Anonymous. Really great questions. So y'all have a great one.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Kavita Bartake. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can get notified of any future videos I upload. I plan to cover a lot of investor education on this channel, and I hope you'll stay with me for it. If you have any feedback on future content you'd like to see me cover, please drop me a note or a comment on my video. Thank you for watching, and thank you for supporting me.